Hello and welcome back to Scale Down Customs. On the workbench today we have the Aoshima Pagani Huayra. Just kidding, I know it's the Pagani Huayra. This is the Pacchetto Tempesta edition of the Huayra. So this has this engine, evidently the engine's the same, but it has some upgrade components for some of the exterior, the wheels, things like that. So gives it a little bit more performance. So as you can see, this is a very, very large box. So let's open it up and see what we got. Wow, that's a lot of parts. Very nice chrome detail on these. It's more of a brushed aluminum look. I like that a lot. Oh, and they have an actual shinier chrome. So they have two different chrome trees. That's really nice. Even though this is shinier, this still looks really nice. I might not be stripping down this chrome. Two sets of wheels. Just to give you some different options. Very nice. The clear parts look very clean. Some additional frosting around the glass for masking. That's always nice. And the body. Wow, that's not a lot of pieces for the body. That's because all the pieces are over there. Very nice, very clean. Masking stickers, those are always nice. And the instructions. Very nice, a lot of detail on these instructions. That's going to help because this kit has a million parts. Oh, so it gives you paint callouts for two different paint manufacturers. There's one thing about this kit that I'm really nervous about, and evidently the doors can be opened. And the last Aoshima kit I did, my Lamborghini Countach, the doors on that can be opened as well, and because they can be opened, the doors do not fit at all when they're closed. So I'm a little worried about this, but so far everything looks really nice. So hopefully I don't have that same issue with this kit. And let's look at the decal sheet. Very small decal sheet, not a lot of decals, but they are really nice. Very nice decals. So that's actually really nice that the glass is frosted, which allows for easier masking, but they also include the paint mask templates that you can put on there. So that's also a nice touch from Aoshima. All right, so according to the instructions, not for use, these are grayed out. So evidently these wheels are not intended for this kit, whereas these are, so good. Those are nice wheels to add to the parts box for something else. Very, very clean detail on these spokes on these wheels, which is really hard to get right. Very minimal flashing to clean up. In fact, almost no flashing. There's a little tiny bit on the back side. Those are really clean wheels. Very nice detail. You got the cross-drilled rotors, some of the interior components for the seats, kind of a textured look on some of these parts. All right, I'm not going to go through every single parts tree. I'm just kind of looking at some of the detail that we have, that we've been given. Very, very nice, very clean. Not a lot of mold lines to deal with. All right, let's look at the body real quick and see what kind of mold lines we have on the body. Little tiny bit of flashing to clean up there on the front end, not too bad. And then the mold line is on the outside of the body right here on this edge, which is a nice place to have it because there is kind of a crease there in the body. And the mold line itself is very, very light, so that'll clean up easy. Very good. All right, this looks like to be a very promising kit. So I'm gonna go get all these parts cleaned up in the sink, get any mold release agent off of there, and then we'll start getting the parts cleaned up and ready for primer and paint. All right, so I got all my parts cleaned up in the sink, and now we're going to do a little pre-primer assembly. And since there's a million pieces, there's actually not a lot of pre-primer assembly that can happen. Mostly it's just going to be the engine block and the transmission. So I'm going to get these assembled, and then we'll be ready for some primer. And I think what I'm going to do for the primer, again, since there's so many pieces, is I'm going to spray everything on the tree. Since there's really not a lot of cleanup work that needs to be done, these pieces look really good. So I'm going to spray everything on the tree and then clip them off and paint them in their appropriate colors as needed. So that's what we're going to do now. Well, I got all my sprue cut points cleaned up and the edges trimmed up, so I'm just going to be using for my glue the Tamiya extra thin cement for that. Some pretty amazing detail just on this engine transmission assembly. Anyway, we're going to let that set up and then we're going to start priming some pieces. Alright, so because there are so many small pieces with this kit, first of all, it would take me a few days to go through and get all these parts cut off and cleaned up and ready for primer individually. And then I run the risk of losing pieces, not knowing which pieces go where, because some of these pieces are not easily as identifiable as some of the larger pieces. So I think I'm going to change my strategy on how I build kits, and I'm probably going to go through and maybe build this page by page. So I'll go through one page, get all those parts cut off, cleaned up, primed and painted, assembled, and then maybe move on to the next couple of pages and kind of work through that way. So we'll try building it that way and see how it works out. So for the first section of the assembly, it's going to be the front brakes. The front, I'm assuming that's a frame assembly, and getting those parts cleaned up and painted. Alright, so I got my engine and transmission assembled and my first page of parts cleaned up. And yeah, all the parts do have a little bit of mold lines on them that I do need to clean up, and of course my sprue cut points, I'm cleaning those up too. So this is going to be a lot of parts that need some cleanup. So I think doing it one page at a time, getting some parts assembled and painted and put together, I think is going to keep me from going crazy from filing down and getting every single piece cleaned up before I start any painting. So, all right, so I got the first page of parts cleaned up and ready to go. And for my primer, I'm just going to be using the Mr. Surface 1000, and I'll be thinning this down with the Mr. Color Leveling Thinner, probably about 1:1. So let's go do that. Alright, got my first batch of parts in primer, so we're going to go paint our first color, which is going to be the all-clad aluminum. And to hold my pieces, I'm just using electrical alligator clips glued to hobby sticks and just some blue tack also stuck to hobby sticks just to hold my parts for painting. So let's go spray some aluminum. All right, so I've been doing some detail painting, just get some of these things ready for installation. And for the fans on my radiator, I just hand painted those. That was a little tricky. So we're ready to do, I want to add a little bit of weathering to these radiators and to my engine and transmission. For the radiators, I'm just going to be using some Tamiya Panaline Accent Color Black. Looks pretty good. For the engine block, I like to use the Mr. Weathering, the Mr. Hobby stuff, and then the Mr. Hobby Solvent 110, which helps kind of thin it down and take it back off. All right, so we are going to put this on pretty heavy, and then we'll take most of it back off to kind of leave us with our darkened shadows and recesses and stuff. We'll just use our solvent to kind of thin it down and start kind of taking a lot of it back off. All right, now that we've got most of it off, I'm just going to add a little more thinner on there just to kind of blend it in and kind of help it, what's left on there, to flow into the cracks and crevices a little bit more. All right, that looks pretty good. Pretty happy with that. We're going to let that set up and keep moving. All right, I'm going to try something. I normally try to airbrush some of these parts, but I want to try hand painting these discs in the gunmetal, Tamiya gunmetal. So I'm going to try that by hand. Actually looks pretty good. That's going to save me a lot of time in masking. Looking better. Alright, so I need to paint the center hubs on these disc brakes, and to do that I want to mask off the rest of it. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my Tamiya tape, my caliper to measure my diameter, and my thinner line circle cutter to cut out my tape. So let's do that. Alright, we're going to go spray those hubs with Tamiya black, just their gloss black. Perfect, just what I wanted. So I'm going to do a little more detail painting on this and then get the decals added, and then we'll be ready for some assembly. Alright, so I got a little bit more of the detail painting done on the brake disc setup. Just add a little bit of chrome on those bolts. So we're going to add some decals, and then we'll be ready for some assembly on the front frame assembly. And for my decals, I saw this. This is just a metal tray that I picked up, like a pencil tray. And then I saw this idea in my latest issue of Model Cars magazine, just a cup warmer, like a coffee cup warmer, just to keep my water warm. So we're going to try that out and see how that goes. Alright, let's put some stuff together. I'm just going to be using my medium super glue. right. There we go with the front frame assembly. That's got some points on there that the gluing points are very, very small. So a lot of little tiny attachment points. A little bit cumbersome to get to some of those, but I think that looks really good. So I'll get some close-up pictures of this for you, and I think that'll do it for this video. So make sure you stay tuned for the next one. We're going to continue this build on the Aoshima Pagani Huayra Pacchetto Tempesta build. So thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you on the next one.